afternoon. Welcome to the March meeting of the Diversity Advisory Committee. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Clyburn, welcome. We have a full agenda today with a number of committee reports and also with some interesting presentations. And with that, I will turn it over to Henry.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. I too would like to add my welcome to everyone. Thanks so much for making time in your very busy schedules to make time for us and for this committee and the work of the committee. It's very important, and the work of the task forces to date has been really impressive, and we're going to hear a lot about that as we move through the meeting. The commissioner is on a very tight schedule, and I've already thanked her a couple of times for making time in her very busy schedule to be with us today. But she's going to deliver some remarks, and then she's going to have to leave. So I would like to welcome her and her terrific staff. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you to a terrific chairman. I appreciate it. Oftentimes we say that we leave the impression that we're very busy, and it's semi-true. I shouldn't give away the family secrets, but today is actually true. So again, thank you for your tolerance, and thank you to Tom Reed for allowing me to join you, and thank you for your willingness to serve. This committee boasts of media experts, leaders in telecommunications, services and policy, civil rights, academics, business, all of you, and we are so extremely fortunate at the FCC to have you. When it comes to your core mission, to examine regulatory policy that enhances opportunity for all, let me deviate from that a bit, because I want to talk to you today about the Lifeline program and the FCC's recent steps to reform this program to ensure that it not only continues to provide telephone service to low-income consumers, but through a modernized framework that it will begin to directly address the broadband realities of the day. And there is definitely a direct link between the things that you do here at with the Diversity FACA and with this program, because again, we're talking about access and we're talking about the platforms that we all hold so dear. As you all know, the Lifeline program was implemented back in 1985 to ensure that anticipated increases in local phone rates would not put telephone service economically out of the reach for low-income households. Then in 1996, Congress set forth a goal that all Americans should have access to communication services at affordable rates, including low-income consumers and residents of tribal lands. And this program has worked by being instrumental in ensuring that all Americans have access to quality telephone service. Many low-income consumers continue to say to us that without a Lifeline subsidy, they would not be able to afford basic phone service. Indeed, since the inception of Lifeline, the gap between telephone penetration rates for households has narrowed from about 12% in 1984 to 4% last year. Telephone service remains a prerequisite for full participation in this society. Consumers who lack affordable quality voice services are at a disadvantage in assessing social and economic resources and opportunities. They cannot connect to public safety and healthcare resources. And if low-income consumers initially subscribe to phone service but intermittently lose access because they are unable to pay for that service, many of the benefits for individuals and the positive externalities would be lost. The Commission continues to be mindful of this and set out to reform the Lifeline program after receiving recommendations from the Federal State Joint Board on Universal Service, making the first comprehensive look at Lifeline since that inception. We instituted many changes to make the program more efficient and economical because, as you know, the marketplace has significantly changed since Lifeline was instituted. Cell phone service began in the 1980s. Seems longer than that, doesn't it? And didn't really become mainstream until the 90s. Of course, he had his phone when it was really expensive and the rest of us couldn't afford it. But today, the amount of mobile phones far outnumber the number of wireline phones, and over 30% of the households have officially cut that cord. As a result, the Lifeline program experienced an increase in inadvertent duplication of services, and we have seen a significant growth in the fund. One of the most important steps we took was to begin modernizing this program through database functionalities. Some states already use a database, but most do not. So we're going to set up a national accountability database to avoid duplicates in the future. We are also working on database capabilities for checking the eligibility of consumers. For example, where a consumer already participates in the food stamp program, which qualifies them for Lifeline service, we want to be able to plug into that information to coordinate Lifeline sign-up for that family. This should make it easier to enroll qualifying consumers and limit the amount of time in which consumers will need to show proof of eligibility. We also made a determination that in providing phone service to a household, we should be certain that consumers who lived in shared housing or homeless shelters can qualify for the program. So we expressly defined a household as an economic unit that both shares in income and expenses. That way, multiple families and roommates at the same address may qualify for Lifeline, where they do not share income. And we are exploring in the further notice whether one service per household really is sufficient for families with multiple adults today, and if not, whether the subsidy should be increased for such households and by how much. Very importantly, we did not cap the funding for this program. As such, no qualifying consumer will be turned away. Also, there will be no minimum charge on consumers participating in this program. Far too many low-income consumers are unbanked, and the cost of spending even a small payment to the carrier far outweighs the charge imposed and would just be another barrier blocking their ability to participate in and benefit from the program. These reforms are expected to reap substantial savings for the Lifeline program, so we set a significant savings target of $200 million for the first year. We plan to revisit the program and its financial state next year, but we anticipate that the reforms we are implementing could ultimately save the fund up to $2 billion over the next 3 years, keeping money in the pockets of the American consumers who actually pay for this universal service program. As we all know, voice-only service in today's environment is insufficient. In our online-dependent world, access to affordable, robust broadband service is just as important as voice. We recognize that accessibility and affordability in terms of broadband is critical, particularly for minority and low-income communities and residents of rural America and tribal lands. And the National Broadband Plan, which incidentally turns 2 this Friday, recognize that although increasing numbers of Americans have broadband at home, some segments of the population, particularly low-income households, racial and ethnic minority seniors, rural residents, residents of tribal lands, and people with disabilities, are disproportionately among those who are disconnected from these modern high-speed internet networks. These are the modern-day have-nots. As a result, those without opportunity of broadband are denied access to some of the basic features of modern life. Access to a bank account, the ability to apply for a job, the inability to obtain critical information and news, the inability to research their homework assignment, or instantaneously are unable to communicate with friends, loved ones, and colleagues. So one of the key recommendations of the National Broadband Plan was to explicitly support broadband in the Lifeline program to help close the gap for home internet service. With the FCC's adoption of the Lifeline Reform Order, we began the process of modernizing the Lifeline program for broadband. First, the Commission adopted an express goal of ensuring the availability of broadband for low-income consumers. Second, it adopted a pilot program using up to $25 million in savings from other reforms to test and determine how Lifeline can be best used to increase broadband adoption among Lifeline-eligible consumers. Starting this year, the program will solicit applications from broadband providers and will select a number of projects to fund, which I hope will be a topic of some conversations to come. Third, and this is significant also, we clarified that the Lifeline subsidy can be used for bundled service and broadband services. This is significant for us all because sometimes these bundled services can offer significant monthly savings. And we are seeking comment on the use of USF for digital literacy training at libraries and schools. Before I sign off, to use a pun, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that it takes the work of many to reform and modernize Lifeline. I am thankful to my colleagues on the Commission who work to strike a balance of reform, accountability, and modernization. But I also would like to thank the work of the state members of the Federal State Joint Board and their staff who worked on the recommended decision to the FCC. For almost 2 years, our staff here at the FCC has been working on this program. Specifically, allow me to acknowledge the work of Sharon Gillette and the Wireline Communications Bureau. They deserve a big thank you. Of course, their work has yet to be done because one of their current goals is to educate all of these Lifeline consumers on those changes that we have made. But I really appreciate that they are so focused on spreading the message, and I look forward to the help of this committee so that no one is left behind. The consumer advocacy representatives in industry also deserve to be acknowledged. Because of their helpful suggestions, we have made significant progress in this proceeding. But I once again want to thank all of you for your hard work and thoughtful guidance over the past several years. And for those of you who are new, thank you in advance for committing your time, your talents to these important endeavors. Have a rest for the rest of your day. Please make it productive. And I don't know if you have any questions. If you do, I have a few moments. And if I can't answer them, I have staff to augment us. Thank you.
Any questions for the Commissioner? I asked her if she would be kind enough to give us that little summary of the Lifeline link-up because I happen to know that it is something that was very near and dear to her heart and still is, and she worked very hard to assure that those folks who are find themselves on the wrong end of the economic scale continue to be connected to the telephone and broadband networks. And many of those folks are often people of color that we deal with, whose interests we deal with. So she's done a terrific job with that program, and hopefully we can hear some more from her about it as time goes on. So thank you very much, Commissioner. Anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, Diane.
Okay.
I just have one, Commissioner. Is there a timed rollout for the implementation of these various pieces?
Absolutely. And I have Angie Cronenberg if you want a precise timetable. And so, as you could imagine, there are so many pieces, especially the digital literacy part, particularly the pilot programs that I really wanted to reemphasize for particularly to this body. And so over the course of the next several years, as I said, with those savings that we will realize, we will be implementing various stages. But I really am very pleased that we got more into sync with the way in which we communicate. It was a very fine, dated program, and we needed to realize with those 30% of the persons cutting the cord, with more of us, being forced to communicate with an online experience, that persons who have financial challenges have the opportunity to sign on. So over the course of the next several years, again, with those savings, we will be able to do more and more things within the current economic framework, because it was important to the chair to stay within, at least initially, within the current economic framework, even though we did not cap the program.
Thank you.
Doctor?
So I have a question on the cross-pollination of the eligibility process with public benefits.
Okay.
And the particular question is, will we see down the line broadband connected to incentivizing people around those benefits, or is it just more of a matter of making sure, based on eligibility, that people who will receive food stamps, et cetera, will get broadband access, or later will we see people who have it advance their economic and social stability?
Okay, I will answer that as best I could. She's got the PhD, and I'm just, I don't even know how to, I'm further down on the educational spectrum. But what, as best I can answer that question.
But you're the commissioner.
Well, I will admit. What we see here, there are certain realities that hopefully will sync my answer up with your question. That there was a need for reform, but there also is a realization that there is a very low percentage of those eligible that are taking advantage of a program. In my state, it's well below 30%. The national average hovers a little, I think it's approaching 40%, because so we've got a program that could bridge so many communications gaps that is quite underutilized. So what we are hoping with the diversity of products being offered and the like, that we will not only see greater participation from that perspective, but with the cost savings and working on the duplicates with the states to sync all of those things, that the savings realized from that will be able to again serve more persons. So things are going to be kind of moving sequentially, but there's going to be, I don't even know what my word would be, but the benefit will be almost in line and syncing congruent. So what comes from here would go here. So that's not answering your question. I'm being very much a politician here. But in terms of syncing up, things are going to be happening on an ongoing basis. And after each year, we're going to be reviewing things and seeing how we're doing in certain aspects.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yes, Jessica, who's changed a little bit since I've seen her last, but
Grown a little bit.
it's grown a little bit.
Is this on?
Yeah.
I know you can hear me anyways.
Right.
So I'm really excited about what you mentioned towards the end of your remarks about the use of USF for digital training at schools and libraries, and we at the Coalition will be anxiously awaiting that piece. Do you expect that we'll see that in an E-rate proceeding or in a Lifeline proceeding, just so we can keep our heads up for it?
Well, I will answer that this way. Hopefully those of you who are interested in things like that being augmented will continue to comment, and we will continue to take those things in consideration and do what we know is best to bridge those divides. So this is I was in a meeting a while ago with someone at this table, and it's matching, the heart with the head. We've got to be able to, do the things that we want to do, that we know we need to do within certain economic parameters. So we may not be able to do it all at one time, but hopefully bit by bit and starting out, again, getting guidance from fine people like you who would say how we need to go from this phase to this phase. through these programs and the like. So I guess what I'm saying, please continue with your efforts, to both challenge us and to present those ideas. And you have an open commission that's willing to do what it can to bridge those divides.
Thank you.
Yes, another doctor.
So I just want to underscore the importance of keeping a very flexible concept of the household.
Right.
2/3 of Americans live in households that either have one or two people in them, and those percentages are actually growing. So these old concepts we had of household are far less relevant than they used to be, and they're going to keep changing. So continue to look at it as flexibly as you can.
Thank you very much. That happens to be out of the items that you could probably guess that my office was most passionate about.
Yeah.
It was that one, ensuring that, just like you said, we have the dexterity, especially in these days and times, to define exactly what. I would not have been comfortable saying it's a physical house or it's a physical premise. That is just not in sync with the current realities. So thank you very much for voicing that and giving affirmation to why we felt that definition should be as broad as possible and have the dexterity it needs to be in sync with current realities. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Now I understood what he said. No, we're just good friends. I'm sorry. And I shouldn't do that to her, Ms. Daniel.
How are you, Commissioner?
I think I'm doing well. I'll listen to your question first.
Thank you for your remarks, and particularly thank you for your leadership with including Section 257 in the Lifeline program and making sure that there's some encouragement, particularly dealing with the pilot programs. And the question I have is particularly about the pilot programs. Are there going to be kind of favorable point scales on encouragement of programs that have minority business opportunities and have minority partnerships, particularly when you're talking about dealing with digital divide of minority communities?
What I am hopeful of and thankful for is this body, who I hope will give us some guidance on that.
Okay. That'd be great. We will look forward to that.
I'm becoming a politician on that. Thank you.
Very
No, but I'm
good.
sincere about that.
I know.
Seriously.
Thank you.
Commissioner, it's
A familiar face to the FCC. Hello, Mr.
Just a very quick question and a pretty broad one. First of all, it's surprising that it's already been 2 years since the National Broadband Plan has
This
been
Friday.
released.
Amazing.
That's amazing. Just want to get your sense on the broadband plan touched on a lot of areas from energy to the environment. I know you've been very much interested in broadband adoption. Just to put you on the spot here, what is your candid assessment as far as how industry and the public sector and really just entire community is done as far as really advancing the goals of the National Broadband Plan, specifically around broadband adoption?
It has been a mixed positive for me in that there are some great things happening with some partners through Connect to Compete and other concepts, but there are a number of places and a number of entities that at this point, I hope would have that their programs would have been more enhanced, and that we would have had more engagement. But again, I remain hopeful, and with the positive examples coming from a number of entities around this table, and including yours, I am hopeful that when persons or entities see the successes and the benefits of these programs and how it enhances their existing, rollout and their existing infrastructure, and how it enhances the opportunities for this nation from an educational standpoint, all of the national purposes that we lead forth, that persons will get exceptionally jealous and replicate in their own ways these programs. Only then will we have the successes that we put forth in terms of, plain old telephone service, how we got to that point before people started, cutting the cord, which is a good thing because, we're talking about opportunities across the board. But I'm hoping that the successes and the encouragement that you will hear coming from this office and this commission will encourage more persons to do likewise. It is necessary. All of us at this table, all of the opportunities that we're talking about enhancing around this table would be augmented with, a with an affordable framework and more persons online and engaged.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've taken up a great deal of your time.
Thank you, not at all. We're so glad you could come, and we better let you go and attend to other business.
I know I haven't even looked at my BlackBerry that I know of, or my staff on the right that I know is. But again, thank you so very much, and as always, my office is open, and I look forward to seeing more of you around the table. Take advantage of it. Thank you.
Now it's time for us to take phone attendance. So if you wouldn't mind saying your name if you're on the phone.
Walter Ulloa from Entravision Communications.
Thanks, Walter.
Bob Mendez, Disney ABC Television Group.
Thanks, Bob.
Anita Graham, Opportunity Broadcasting.
Okay, got Anita Graham. And who
Yeah,
else?
Steve Rob.
Steve Roberts, thanks.
Yeah, Roberts Broadcasting.
Sherman Kizar Media Partners.
Tony Perez, Natoa.
Joanne Towner, CBS Radio.
Got it, Joanne?
And Women in Cable Telecommunications.
Maxie Jackson, NFCB, National Federation of Community Broadcasters.
Patrick Taylor, National Urban League.
That it? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. I'd like to go around the table as we did last time, because I know some of us don't know each other yet. So if we could just go around and indicate who you are and your organization, and I'll start. I'm Henry Rivera. I chair the advisory committee. Over to you, Barbara.
Barbara Kreisman. I'm the DFO. It's sort of I'm also chief
UFO,
of the.
right?
That's right. That might be better off as a UFO, actually.
Thomas Reed, director of OCBO.
Eric Broyles, I'm co-founder of McGree.
Donna Epps with Verizon.
Rudy Brioche with Comcast NBC Universal.
Bridget Daniel with Wilco Electronic Systems Incorporated.
Diane Sutter, Shooting Star Broadcasting.
Maduro with Jordan National Urban League.
Jason Legria, Asian American Justice Center.
Carla Ballard, One Economy.
Jim Winston, National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters.
Sylvia Strobel, Alliance for Women in Media.
Charles Hurrell II, the president of the IT Architect Corporation.
Jorge Schmidt, Dean of the School of Communication and Information at Rutgers University.
Celia Nogales at AT&T.
Jesse Salazar, Director of Government Relations at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Erin Dozier with the National Association of Broadcasters.
Jessica Gonzalez with the National Hispanic Media Coalition.
Corey Wright, Free Press.
Carolyn Fleming Williams, Deputy DFO and also Senior Deputy with the OCBO.
Nicole Turner Lee, Vice President Director of the Media Technology Institute at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies.
David Honig, President of MMTC.
Ronald Johnson, Solutions for Change and Ronson Network Services.
Brett Perkins with Comcast.
We also have back here Ann Lucy sitting in for CBS, who I should have at the table. Sorry.
And Jose, you were missing in action. Thank you all. Again, welcome. I think we'll move next to Tom Reed, who's going to talk about a couple of new task forces that we're going to be forming and some other stuff. So,
right.
Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Henry. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everybody back. Preliminarily, I want to thank the subcommittees who've been hard at work already since even before our first meeting in 2011. Channels 5 and 6, the EEO subcommittee, EO best practices, and the unlicensed spectrum subcommittee. I know many of you have already joined those subcommittees, and we have been very gratified at the progress you've made, and I look forward to your reports. I know Susan Patrick, who's not here, who chairs the Channels 5 and 6. So would like to thank her for her work. And Dr. Nicole Turner-Lee, Unlicensed Spectrum, and EEO Best Practices, David Honig. So I know they have been cracking the whip for all of the other members so that we at the government can be the nice guys. So I really appreciate what you've all been doing. Henry, I'd also like to thank Carolyn Fleming Williams, who's worked with the subcommittees, and Nicole McGinnis and Barbara. I think obviously they've been advising all the subcommittees, and hopefully that's been very helpful to you. And they'll continue to do that as we expand the number of issues that this body will look at. So Henry mentioned that we have a couple new issues that we're introducing today, and I'd like to thank all of you who have already been invited to participate and have agreed to do so. And I know some of you are even doubling up, so I really appreciate that as well. I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk about sort of what our initial expectations are. Obviously this is a continuing conversation with all of the subcommittees so that we can help clarify these issues going forward. The first issue is, as you see on your schedule, is the market entry barriers issue, that looking at market entry barriers in media and telecom sort of traditionally as compared to market entry barriers in sort of the new tech realm in internet ownership. Here's how that particular issue, I think, informs the work of the Commission. I mean, as many of you know, and has been mentioned already, we have a responsibility under Section 257 to identify and eliminate barriers to entry, market entry barriers, for entrepreneurs and other small businesses in telecom and media, in the provision of services and products that serve providers of telecom and media. And with respect to that, we every 3 years are responsible for providing a report to Congress on our efforts for that triennial period. The current period that we are in is going to be up at the end of this year. So already we're compiling that. As a matter of fact, Carolyn is sort of running point on that issue with our Chief of Staff Sharon Stewart and coordinating with the other bureaus and offices on the work that they've been up to in this last reporting period, so that we can provide our information to Congress in a timely manner. So the work of this first subcommittee on market entry barriers really will inform what's happening presently at the Commission with respect to the 257 report. I think our thought here is that there's real observable, not data, but real observable and anecdotal evidence out there of what the barriers are. Some of them we all know. I mean, obviously, money being a big one when we're talking about traditional services. But we're also learning a good deal about, new tech, and I know many of you are already in that area and figuring out what the issues are for smaller players. I know that Nicole's group has already looked at a little bit of that, and some of the information that they've compiled is germane to what this subcommittee will be looking at when they're looking at new media and internet-based ownership. So I think that, in a nutshell, is sort of our expectation. In addition to that, I think many of you may know, on the 6th of February, we issued an RFQ for a literature review, and sort of broadly focused on the critical information needs of all Americans, including women and minorities and other diverse groups. It really is envisioned to kind of do an overlay of what's happening in the market, how different groups access critical information, whether it be health information, emergency preparedness information, educational and other information that we're going to be relying on whoever we contract with to sort of define what critical information needs are. Why that's relevant is to the extent that we are able to determine from the initial review that there are gaps that there are communities that aren't being served by the multiplicity of informational options that are out there and communications options that are out there, that may have some connection to who's providing services and who's providing content and who's providing information. Again, the work that this first subcommittee will be doing will be married to the work that we're going to be receiving from an outside contractor. Just to give you a sense of the timing of that, we are presently engaged in selecting, the awardee, and we are expecting that work is going to come back. At least the initial review is going to come back in the summer, and that will hopefully inform additional studies that we intend to go forward with. So there's a lot there in the first group. It's a broad question, but it's definitely tied to efforts that are hard underway at the Commission. So I look forward to working with this subcommittee on that one. The second issue is the promoting supplier diversity in the private sector. And I'll tell you, this one is I think is broad, but it's also direct and very practical. OCBO and the agency right now is revitalizing its supplier diversity outreach program. OCBO has the laboring oar on that, and the challenge at the agency on that point is that we are not heavy or flush with procurement resources. I mean, we're not like Department of Labor or Transportation or any of the other agencies, DoD, that have just a panoply of procurement opportunities. And so our focus really is seeing what we can do to stimulate activity in the private sector. And while that is a direct mission, it's also, I think, one where we have to be very creative. There's a tremendous amount of expertise in this room, and I think the individuals that we've reached out to serve on this subcommittee, all of you who are our chamber members, who have the experience in the private sector and with small businesses, how can that particular group help us design a program that both looks at private sector opportunities and in fact public sector opportunities, government opportunities. The genesis of this was actually a conversation I had a couple years ago with Mark Morial at the Urban League, and one of his ideas was to pull together officers like myself and other individuals who are OSDBU officers and procurement officers throughout other government agencies and getting them in the room to talk to business leaders and chamber leaders. That is sort of a first step at providing some connectivity to what we do at the government, at least on the public sector side, with opportunities that small businesses are looking for. As many of you know, getting a federal opportunity and a contract can be what really makes a small business and allows them to grow. So that's one side of it that we're looking at, and in a very concrete way, hopefully this summer we'll be able to put on a program. And we're not attempting to reinvent the wheel. There are programs that are done like this in many other avenues. But having this subcommittee work with us to help design a program that's going to be that much more effective, that connects a lot of small players in this area and others with the larger providers, internet service providers, other large companies in media and telecom, to educate smaller businesses who want to link up with them to get those contracting, those second-tier opportunities. I think that really assist their growth. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how these next two subcommittees will marry up with what we're attempting to do here at the Commission. So thank you, Henry.
Thank you very much, Tom. All right, I have reached out to a number of people to serve on these two new task forces, and have heard from everyone except one person, and everyone has agreed to serve. And most significantly, Diane Sutter has graciously agreed to chair the Market Entry Barrier Task Force, and Ron Johnson has graciously agreed to chair the Supplier Diversity Task Force. So you will be hearing from those folks about convening those task forces and getting going to work. If there's anyone else who would like to serve on either or both of those task forces, please let me know. Send me an email so I can coordinate that, and we know that you would like to do that. All are invited. There's no particular restriction on the number of people who can be on a task force. So if you've got an interest in either of these subjects, please let me know. We have been joined by the chief of the Media Bureau, my old friend Bill Lake. And I don't know, Bill, do you want to say anything to the assembled, or are you just here to...
That I'm glad to be here, and sorry I couldn't be here sooner, but I'm delighted to see you all here and participate with you.
Great. I'm glad to have you. Thanks so much for coming. All right. We're going to move on then to the reports from the task forces, and we'll start off with Dr. Turner Lee, and who chairs the Wi-Fi Technology Task Force. So, Dr. Turner Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman Rivera, DFO Barbara Kreisman, and Deputy DFO Carolyn Williams, and all fellow committee members. So I'm going to offer a very brief verbal report from the Wi-Fi Task Force Committee, and for those of you, just as a reminder, I will tell you the members that are on that committee, just so you're aware. That would be Donna Epps from Verizon, Bridget Daniel from Wilco, Eric Broyles from McGree, and Jose Marquez from Latinos in Science and Technology Association, LISTA, and Jackie Clary from MMTC has been our rapporteur. For the purpose of this meeting, and I'll sort of repeat what I said at the last meeting around spectrum policies, I think I'm preaching to the choir when we say that spectrum policies should be used to enable innovation and accommodate consumer demand by creating opportunities for small, minority, and women entrepreneurs in telecommunications and technology. And what we have seen since the last meeting in terms of spectrum allocation and management, that has become a top priority here at the Federal Communications Commission because of the use of mobile broadband in our society and the potential for a spectrum crunch. And I think since we last met, the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012 actually addressed the voluntary incentive auctions on the commercial side. So we're actually glad to see that. And as the commissioner said earlier, with the advent of the second anniversary of the National Broadband Plan, that was clearly indicated a need for spectrum to be made more available to accommodate wireless demand. The charge of our committee, however, has been on the emphasis around unlicensed spectrum technologies for use by minorities, women, and small entrepreneurs. So we have been meeting, and I have to admit we've also been very much educated in this area in our committee as we've tried to determine ways that unlicensed spectrum could facilitate entry into the marketplace for minorities. So I'm not going to offer any formal recommendations at this point, but just give you a brief overview of what we have identified in this process. For knowledge, for those of you, some additional knowledge in the area, the devices that we're looking at that can leverage unlicensed spectrum technologies are fairly extensive, and they include key fobs, baby monitors, garage door openers, digital devices like your e-readers, and computers. And they can be used for person-to-person communication devices, computer networking devices, fixed wireless communication devices, monitoring and identification devices, detection and imaging devices, and remote sensing and telemetry devices. All of that is very interesting, and as we did our work in this task force, we found that there still are some barriers to entry for minorities, women, and small entrepreneurs. In particular, and this is in a small, non-empirical poll that we did, these groups of communities do not know anything about this. The education and awareness among small, minority, and women entrepreneurs adds to the application, appropriate use, and opportunities to leverage the unlicensed device marketplace and to create services and pilot programs to advance public good are relatively unknown. And so as we go through our task force, we'll be identifying ways to work with the commission and the committee to figure out how we actually increase their awareness. The other thing that we discussed in our task force was the access to capital, business networks, and the technical expertise to create and support FCC-compliant devices. So we had the honor of speaking briefly with people at the Office of Engineering and Technology here at the FCC to learn a little bit more about the unlicensed spectrum space and the devices that use that band and the compliance process. And in speaking with them, obviously, as we've seen in other areas, understanding the capital requirements, the expertise requirements, as well as the compliance area will be very essential to actually increase more participation and inclusion among these groups. The other part that we found to be interesting as well in terms of education is the use of unlicensed spectrum technologies for community pilots or the expansions of wireless service to communities, much like in rural communities where it's a way to be creative using existing devices that are in current stores to create Wi-Fi hotspots. So that's another area that we're looking at in terms of the way that these targeted groups could serve community benefit, whether it be educational, healthcare, and employment pilots. And so I want to stop there in terms of our general briefing on what the committee has discussed until we put things in writing. But I'd like to propose to the general committee that, there are a couple of discussion points that our group has basically come up with that we're going to continue to lead as we go forth with this conversation. What are some strategies to increase awareness and education among minority women and small entrepreneurs on ways to engage unlicensed spectrum technologies and devices? How can unlicensed spectrum be used to support community pilots and other innovative projects led by small entrepreneurs, women, and minorities to strengthen public Wi-Fi to community anchor institutions, parks, libraries, and community centers? And how can we encourage partnerships between small and or entry-level businesses and more seasoned manufacturers in the compliance and device approval process? What we have discovered, there is a whole process for compliance of the variety of devices that we currently use, whether it's your e-reader, etc. If you look at the back of your devices, there's a little sticker, which I had to go back and look at, that says FCC compliant. Unfortunately, when we did our poll, many of these entrepreneurs were not aware of the compliance process. So we've got some education to do. We actually, just for the sake of this conversation, we polled a group of entrepreneurs that our task force were exposed to, just non-empirical. And the first question was, have you ever heard of unlicensed spectrum technology? And the majority of people said no. And then when we asked them, do you know anybody who's ever used the technology? The majority of people said no. And when we asked them, do you want to learn more? The majority of people said yes. And so our goal is to figure out, how do we introduce not only what the technologies can do and the benefit of using it, but also educate these entrepreneurs on how they actually navigate through the process to create those type of compliant devices. And as a task force, just in conclusion, we see this as a critical opportunity for these communities because, again, it is a low barrier to entry, but it's also the next burgeoning market outside of applications. The devices that we use to actually access the applications that we all, love and trust and rely upon to do our daily work will be very much dependent and grow the next wave of the digital ecosystem. So our committee will be looking further into those things, and I'm going to stop for a moment just to ensure that the fellow committee members actually, if they have something to contribute, that they can do that now. But that's where we are, Chairman, just trying to really do some further investigation and exploration of what this actually means.
Thank you. Any members of that task force want to weigh in? Or did Nicole pretty well cover it? Bridget?
Thank you, Nicole, for your leadership. This was a very interesting, complex topic. You handled it very well, so we're very grateful to you and your kind of charting us in this new direction. But I think you said so many good things, and I think one of them is just this is one of the last vestiges of opportunity for minority inclusion, particularly with entrepreneurs. I think a lot of minority communities are the people that actually use this device, and this is one of their only ways of getting access. So if we're able to create opportunities, whether it's unlicensed spectrum, whether it's community pilot programs, whether it's white space, I think that's an area that, as even Tom Reed just mentioned about minority internet businesses, we're moving in that knowledge-based economy. We should be moving as a commission to looking at those opportunities that we can leverage off application creation as well as participation of more diversity in that area. So it's a burgeoning kind of, I think, committee, and we're really interested in just seeing what we can do and what we can do further. So thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
I think Jose, did you have?
Well, basically, in our communities, and I'm speaking in African American and Asian and Latino, we who are in this business, this is a simple thing for us, and we thought that it wasn't going to be that much of a problem. But when I sat down and I listened to that conversation with the engineers, I mean, I'm an engineer, and I'm like, what? Okay, so if I'm wondering, I think that, and I'm going to make a suggestion. It's not something that has been discussed, but I think we need to have other people come into this committee here and sort of testify to the chair and to some of the commissioners their lack of knowledge, whether it's, I know it's not because they don't want to know, and it's not because they don't, but it just has never been given in our direction. So I think that we have to put some sort of small group together, whether it's a commission, the commissioners and the chair, and of course, Tom, I think that you should be on it as well because of that program that you're running. Our people need to voice their opinion. And if they get, maybe that'll give us better marching orders, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Good. Thank you. That's a good idea. Anybody else? Diane.
I know based on the new assignment that we have gotten when it comes to barriers to entry, I think it makes a lot of sense if we would have a conversation and coordinate what your findings are so that we can make sure that we're including that in our discussion as the new task force goes forward and figuring out what barriers to entry are. So I'll look forward to having that conversation with you.
Another good idea. Anybody else? Tom, do you have any reaction to that report?
Oh, I think that's amazing, as Nicole's work always is, and the work of this subcommittee. I have a particular reaction to the community pilot program ideas. The educational features of that, I think, are very important, and I think internally we can certainly commit to working with this subcommittee to make sure that you have the internal tools here. I'll actually commit our internal diversity task force to that as well. So if there, in terms of the agency's resources in putting together workshops or programs that will assist in educating the community about these opportunities, then I think that would be incredibly valuable to add to this discussion. So we look forward to working further with this subcommittee on these issues.
Terrific. And Nicole, I commend Jose's idea to you, and maybe you guys can talk about it and we can flesh it out and come up with a plan.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
All right. Thank you. Great work, everybody. All right. The next task force is that will report is the EEO enforcement, and David Honig will give that report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The EEO Enforcement Task Force members are Sylvia Strobel, Carla Ballard, Jason Legria, Rudy Brioche, Andy Schwartzman, and myself. Darissa Griffin of MMTC is our rapporteur. And we I want to acknowledge the assistance that we had in preparing the report today from Devin Hankerson and Tiffany Bain, who are respectively the Research Director and Research Associate of MMTC. Our task was to come up with a survey design and instrument that could be presented to a sample of companies across all platforms, including those under Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title VI, some of which, of course, are not necessarily regulated by the Commission, but it would be good information to just know the whole ecosystem. And to have this instrument obtain information on essentially a photograph of where these industries stand, not just in the numbers of people that they employ in different categories, but also on their, if they have compliance responsibilities, how those are effectuated, and particularly on best practices. So a draft, and I want to emphasize that the document you have is an early draft. There are still many edits that need to be made to it. It is essentially a background report to provide context, a design of an instrument, questions, and a proposed stratified sample. The next step one would normally take in considering the performance of this kind of survey would be a peer review. And the subcommittee, the task force rather, met 2 days ago to consider what should be the next steps and how to get this moving. We considered in particular a motion to have a peer review team review this instrument and study and the study. If the Commission appropriates funds to conduct the study, and I want to just add as a point of privilege, if such funds are available, if this is agreeable to the committee that the committee recommend that the commission appropriate those funds, which we estimate to be in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $75,000. That motion was discussed and was passed by a vote of 4 yes, 1 abstaining, 1 absent, and it is therefore commended to the full committee for its consideration.
All right, is there a second to that motion receiving from that task force? There must be somebody on that task force, Sylvia, who will second that. All right, is there any discussion about it? I think it's very important to understand that this motion is on the condition that funds become available, because there are no funds for 2013 at this point, and the commission doesn't have extra money. So we're hoping that at some point Congress sees fit to appropriate additional funds that could be used for this purpose. But so we have that motion on the table. Any discussion? Are you ready for the question? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. The motion carries. Anything else, David?
No, that concludes our report. Thank you.
Well, a terrific piece of work here. Obviously, if you haven't read this document, I commend it to you. If you've got any comments on it, get those to David as they move forward with this. Tom, sir, do you have anything to add?
Well, obviously, my comments will be very careful in that I haven't had a full opportunity to review it. I thank David for his work. I have looked at it a little bit, obviously. I thank you for the proviso, which I think is apparent to everyone, and that is, if there are funds available. We are currently looking at a number of, as I mentioned, the critical info needs study that's going out and committing funds for additional studies as we go through, sort of muscling through fiscal 2012. As you mentioned correctly, Henry, fiscal 2013 is a question mark. But we certainly will take this proposal under advisement, and I will be talking to all the right people internally to see what's feasible and how it marries up with the work that we're thinking about currently. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, the final report is on the Channel 5-6 issue, and Susan Patrick was unavoidably detained. She's acting as an expert witness in a trial in Alexandria, and she couldn't be with us today. So she asked me to give this report. And it basically is a report of the task force that they have run up against a wall here at this point and are looking maybe to get some help out of the commission. So Tom and I have talked, and I'll let him address how he thinks we ought to approach this recommendation at this point.
We're the government. We're here to help.
Yeah.
So, this was a tall order, channels 5 and 6, and what would be a sort of a feasible approach to migrating AM stations into the lower FM band. And Bill is here, so I think if I say anything out of turn, he'll tap me. What I think will be an appropriate thing to do is for those of us in the commission who've looked at this issue. I've been one of them. Rebecca Hansen from Bill's office has been another. We've taken a look at this issue. I think it's important that we sort of have a conversation with this subcommittee so that we can help clarify what our expectation is. I think, again, sort of coming up with sort of expert advice on how exactly this plays out when there's so many issues. There are market issues involved with current individuals who own space on FM. There are cost issues that present themselves for AM station owners who might be interested in the opportunity. There are multicast cost issues. There are transmission and conversion cost issues that would impact some of the individuals that we would be looking at that might want to take advantage of it, that don't necessarily have the resources to sort of shoulder the startup cost. There are also issues in the marketplace in terms of individuals that are building tuners and whether or not they're incentivized to do that, to create an opportunity at the lower FM band. So any number of these issues we're absolutely prepared to talk about and to help clarify how the work of the subcommittee could at least give us some insight on what might be a feasible approach to it. And I don't know, I'll defer to Bill if he has any thoughts on that, but I don't want to put him on the spot either.
No, I think you said it well. There are a lot of complexities here, and we'd love to have a further exchange with you about them.
Anybody have anything to say about that? That we'll put Susan and the task force in touch with Tom and his folks, and we'll see where we go from there. So that's basically where we are with that task force. So that concludes the task force reports, and we're going to move now into the presentation phase of the meeting, and we've got some what I believe are going to be some excellent presentations. And kicking things off for us is going to be the new chair of our Supplier Diversity Committee, Ron Johnson, who's going to talk to us about doing business with telecom companies. So, Ron, you've got the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Rivera and fellow committee members. First, let me apologize for this raspy voice. I'm just recovering from a terrible bout of the flu, and you guys don't have to move down. I'm not passing this on to you right now. But thank you for the opportunity to address this very important and challenging and complex topic. And I'm looking forward to chairing the committee, Mr. Chairman, and bringing whatever experience and expertise we can to this discussion. As I begin my second term of service on this commission, I am really encouraged by the continued commitment to diversity that the commission and staff have shown during this time. It is becoming more evident as the information highway progresses at cosmic-like speed, and as we ponder ways to build the last mile, reach millions of unserved communities, and provide internet access to every household in America, and to create countless new jobs and even new workplace labor categories, that the issue of fairness, equality, justice, and economic prosperity for all Americans, regardless of race, gender, religion, or creed, still is the cornerstone of this Obama administration, and that each day it resonates more clearly and more emphatically right here at the FCC. For small businesses all over America, Mr. Chairman, we would like to tell the FC how much we appreciate their support and active engagement in this subject. As the FCC continues to build its recipe for diversity, I hope that the telecommunication industry, those that are here today and those who are listening in and who will be reading this transcript, will certainly agree to become full partners in this process of diversity. For the last 25 years, I have been involved in some aspect of the telecommunication industry. And during this time, we have witnessed unparalleled innovation and growth in the industry. The telecom dirt road, as we like to call it, has become a super worldwide highway with many builders and millions of travelers and countless new technologies. When my company first won this contract many years ago with FEMA to retrofit all of the 32 primary emergency radio stations in America, I had no idea that we would be at this point in our history of telecommunications. You know about the 32 primary emergency broadcast stations. You're driving down the road and all of a sudden your radio goes blank and it says, "This is just a test." There are 32 radio stations in America that in case of national emergency, all the other radio stations would have to give way to those 32. A very important work, and 20 years ago when I did this project, I had no idea that I wouldn't be called back to retrofit them again. I never figured that out, but we did a great job, but that project then went to a certified 8A firm, and we were not allowed to bid on it after that. During the span of these 25 years, I have worked with many telecom providers, manufacturers, builders, resellers of products and services, and even small and medium-sized companies all over America. And my company has morphed from a small business to Ronson to now One Solutions for Change that is dedicated primarily to helping other small businesses who are trying to get a foothold in the telecommunication industry. As all of you well know, this diversity issue is complex, it's large, it's unpredictable, it's like a big elephant in the room, And doing business with telecom companies is difficult for me and for all of us in this room to really get our arms around this discussion. And certainly within the time limit that the chairman has given me, and I've probably exceeded it already, we cannot have a full discussion about this. But what I would like to do is just leave with you a simple foretaste of what you might hear from other small minority firms and women-owned businesses if they were in the room today. And I've decided to talk about three things that I would like to leave with you. One, share some insight about my own experiences and lessons learned and best practices. Discuss some of the barriers to entry and expansion for diverse companies like mine. And then some suggestions of how we might move forward in this critical area at this time. And so rightly so, given that my company is an infrastructure company, I will focus most of my attention on the infrastructure side of telecom. Engineering, site acquisition, tower construction, network upgrades, wiring, cabling, network testing, and turn-ups. There are other services, of course, like finance, IT, temp services, new applications, and government solution products. And for me, I consider these soft procurements and therefore require a separate and different conversation than the one that we're having now. But my sense is that you will find more diverse players in the soft service areas of telecom than you will find in the CapEx side. I think we all know that the revenue driver of the telecom companies are products that result from enormous amount of capital outlays each year. It is consumer driven. It has endless repeat business opportunities for businesses of all size. It is a necessary part of a telecom company's business model, and it is, in my opinion, the most important aspect of the information highway today. It is where diverse companies should concentrate, in my opinion, their attention, and it is where a public-private partnership is most needed and most required. Experiences and lessons learned and best practices for success is an area that most minority and women-owned businesses could share with you. But today I think there are two important aspects of this subtopic that might be of interest to you. Over the last years, I have learned to rely heavily as a contractor on information exchange and information sources. And I encourage all of my clients and business partners that I work with all over the country to pay particular attention to the SEC filings, corporate annual reports, media events of all kinds, and major conferences where leaders of industry gather to talk about how to do business with minority firms. Many years ago, many of you probably remember the Supercom conference. It was always held in Atlanta and then moved to Chicago, a very successful conference. And the basis of it was to get large and small businesses together and talk about industry best practices, and also to roll out new products that industry wanted the consumers and the business community to buy. And I would think that from a public partnership that the FCC telecom industry might consider a repeat of that type of conference. I believe it would be useful to have a similar kind of gathering if we properly fashion it with measurable results and performance indicators so that we would know exactly at the end of the day, did we reach the diverse companies that we intended to reach. It's doing these kinds of conferences that minority firms, women-owned businesses in particular, will have opportunity to share their experiences and their products and their services to a captured audience. That captured audience would be, in this case, industry and not government. The other aspect of lessons learned that I always pass on to, or try to pass on to my clients and other companies that I partnered with, is this notion of knowing what the client is trying to buy, what AT&T is buying, what Comcast is buying, what Verizon is buying, and what quantities are they buying these products, when are they buying these products, and what part of the regions of the country are they buying these products for. And for companies like mine, small companies, being aware of what they are buying and what we are selling certainly is a very formidable barrier, but it's that kind of conversation we need to have with the major carriers and other telecom players. It is essentially to grow in your business, and I always encourage small businesses to do that. So what would be the industry action in this regard? I would suggest that the telecoms would provide, and they do some of this now, more meaningful information, more detailed information about the opportunities for small businesses. and other diverse companies through their websites, through minority media outlets, through symposium, trade days, and other kinds of shows. And some of the companies are doing this now, but I think we need to have more of these exercises if we're going to open up and bring down the barriers to diversity participation. Now, there are two major barriers that I would like to share with you, and clearly they are not new to you, those of you who are very active in this field. One is the bundling of capital expense. Now, let me hasten to say that bundling of contracts is not just related to the private sector. The federal government is doing that and certainly has created many issues for small businesses. We have begun to break down some of the barriers related to bundling, and it certainly has meant that many more small businesses have an opportunity to participate on the federal government side. So I would like to see on the industry side that we would find a way to unbundle some of the large contracts that are let. This is a most formidable barrier to small companies. It's this bundling of construction and infrastructure work primarily on regional rollouts that makes it very difficult for small, diverse businesses to compete. In this instance, the only companies that are in the $100 million and even $1 billion range can compete for these awards, particularly when there are only 5 or 6 major players, and they generally get the preponderance of most of the work. The bundling practice results in diverse companies being relegated to 3rd and 4th tier contractors, where the profit is low, the competition is fierce, and where the telecom carriers have little, if any, influence on the diversity spend at this level. And so there's very little incentive for 2nd tier and 1st tier contractors to work with minority firms. So I would recommend as an industry action that we certainly would consider that telecoms would do their best to unbundle large CapEx projects and flow down and enforce the diversity requirements through their major subcontractors. Now, generally, this is not a significant barrier to diverse companies seeking to work with telecoms on government solution products and services, primarily because of federally diversity embedded requirements that you have to have diversity companies, small business, women-owned, service-disabled veteran companies participating in these large government contracts. That does not apply, as most of you well know, to these to the capital expenses for large telecoms. And the other barrier is one that certainly would come as no surprise to any of us, and that is access to capital and capital formation, which remains one of the greatest impediments to growing small businesses in America. A diverse business, whether it is in infrastructure or media ownership, new media products, content providers, new app designers, etc., it is a formidable challenge, this raising of capital. Certainly the office here of Minority Business and MMTC continues to call attention to this issue. We all appreciate what they've done so far in having conferences and workshops right here in this room on this subject. It's been very valuable to companies like mine. I think the industry and government partnership suggestion here would be to continue to educate financial institutions, investment houses, and angel investors about the strength of the telecommunication industry. And how by investing in these companies they can get a reasonable return on their investment. My angel investment partners and I are constantly looking for opportunities with diverse companies that have good ideas and are trying to expand their existing businesses. Some government incentive to encourage investors like myself and others to do so, I think, would be beneficial to all. Now, I have 6 suggestions for how we might move forward here, and I'll quickly get to those. First of all, I think that we need to stay informed, or minority businesses and diverse businesses need to stay informed of the public policy debates in the field, whether it's spectrum or tower sharing or intellectual property rights and other major issues that confront us. The successful small businesses that pay attention to these public policy issues are the ones that will get ahead. And secondly, I think that small businesses need to stay informed of government-sponsored initiatives like BTOP, USF, Lifeline, etc., because they all provide great opportunities for small businesses and diverse businesses to grow their companies and become major stakeholders in this process. And thirdly, I think small businesses need to be involved in industry associations. There's a wealth of knowledge and networking that takes place being a part of these associations. Some of my clients and most of my partners are engaged in these kinds of relationships. And number 4, I think we should encourage small businesses to develop partnerships with other small and diverse companies that share like business acumen, who share like business models and like business focus. And 5th, I suggest that small businesses partner with regional, state, and local bodies. In Fairfax County, where I'm a commissioner, we have a program to attract small businesses from not only our region but other places in the country to come to Fairfax County to move here because we feel that it's a good place and that these small companies, through their regional, state, and local bodies, can have an opportunity to grow their business enterprise. And certainly this applies to telecom companies as well. And most of all, I think small businesses need to provide, and most of them do, a first-class service or product, best-in-class product or service. That, to me, is the defining aspect of any small business, being a diverse or whatever, is to have a good product to sell to the marketplace. And finally, I would just like to share with you on this issue of financing small business, a situation that I was engaged in maybe 20 years ago. It was the imposition of the movement of 2 banks from North Carolina to Virginia. And I was asked to testify before the Federal Reserve in Richmond on the moving of these banks, or of these banks coming to the state of Virginia under CRA. And I was asked to speak on the subject of whether or not these banks would be able to create job opportunities and economic growth for our communities. And I was asked to explain why I thought that capital investment and financing was so important. It was important then, and it's clearly important now as we try to build out this infrastructure, this highway that we're talking about. And I used the example that I've used many occasions. When I was growing up as a young boy, I had the opportunity to work on a farm. And during this experience, my parents and I would go to church every Sunday, and we would sit in a hot church on Sunday, and when the service was over, we would pray for rain because our tobacco was drying up in the field. But on the way home, I would see my neighbor's tobacco field was 6 feet, had tobacco that was 6 feet tall, and my dad's tobacco was only 3 feet tall. And the reason was because my neighbor had an irrigation system that the bank funded because he had access to capital. My father and my grandfather both had good credit, but did not have access. And unfortunately, we are facing that same dilemma in telecommunications. My clients tell me every day, but for capital, we would be able to grow our firms and our companies. And so I would like to just share, that with you because it is something I certainly have never forgotten, and I hope that sharing that short story with you will encourage you to reflect on how we can get these small businesses and diverse businesses more engaged in telecom. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that I'm not feeling well today, so if you have any questions, I would certainly like to answer them at this time.
Well, thank you for that excellent presentation, Ron. Does anyone have any questions for him? I know we will be hearing more from him and his task force as he begins to implement some of those points, I think, that he raised. So it was an excellent presentation. Thank you again. Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole, I didn't see you.
Just for a note, I think going back to Tom Reed's prior comment, though, about the new task force that's going to look at supplier diversity, I think Mr. Johnson's presentation brings up some really important points about how the supply chain does look different in the telecom space from more of the construction side of the business to the soft side through the applications market or other opportunities that are being generated as a result of this new ecosystem, whether it's call center jobs, et cetera. So I just put that out as for that committee to really think about, how do we then look at the supplier diversity model to ensure inclusiveness at all levels of the food chain.
Thank you for that. It's an excellent point.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to add to that. I certainly was not aware of the other reports that preceded me, but it is ironic that we're all saying the same thing. And I think that certainly suggests how important this subject is.
Amen. All right. We're going to move now to hear from Mr. Scott Saperstein of AT&T, who's going to talk to us about the AT&T Aspire program. And special thanks to Celia Nogales, our co-member of our committee, for corralling Mr. Saperstein. And we sure appreciate your taking time to come visit with us. So you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Barbara, and to other members of the committee for giving us the opportunity to come and provide you with a preview of our Aspire program, which is our philanthropic program to help reduce the high school dropout rate and lead to high school success and college and career readiness. I'm going to start by kind of just going back to 2008 when we actually started the program. And then I'll jump forward. This coming Monday, our chairman will be in town to make an announcement of the next 4 years of Aspire at the America's Promise Alliance Building a Grad Nation Summit. And we're really excited about that. But let me just take you back briefly, and I'm mindful of the time. We started the program back in 2008 at a time when our chairman charged the foundation to come up, to go back and come up with a program on education that could be helpful across the nation and come up with an area that had not already been inhabited by other companies or other community leaders. So the program that they came up with really was looking at high school success and workforce readiness. And the program the first 4 years looked at probably 4 key areas. We needed to do more of what was already working. Let's not recreate the wheel. So a lot of emphasis was put into local grant programs, working with community leaders, community foundations, school district foundations to actually come up with programs that would work. Advancing understanding. We knew that there was a lot of research that still needed to be done in this area. So we funded a number of research studies, some by the Civic Enterprise, some by John Bridgeland at Civic Enterprises in conjunction with Johns Hopkins. Part of the program also involved youth and family. It was really apparent to us that parents wanted and needed to get more involved in their students' learning and encouraging them to graduate on time. And these programs actually were very successful, both some of them from actually the programs that were actually recommended by students themselves and then family members. And then finally, career exploration, which we kind of handled in 2 ways. We had the largest job shadow program in the country, I believe, in conjunction with Junior Achievement. We reached over 100,000 students through this program, and we held the programs in 212 cities. We also partnered with Road Trip Nation, a PBS show that some of you may be familiar with, to actually get students out on the road and in their local communities to interview folks, to actually find business leaders and community leaders, and to actually make that cold call for the first time, to say, I want to come in and I want to talk to you, I want to interview you. And many students found that alone was part of the impetus for them to say, hey, you know what, that's a job I never would have thought of. That's something I want to do. So those on the phone, I'm on page 5. I just wanted to provide the first 4 years, it was a $100 million commitment with more than 1,000 plus different national and community organizations participating. And like I said, in 212 cities of Job Shadow. Now let me move forward. The first 2 years were based on kind of traditional philanthropy and internal participation, like I said, with Job Shadow. The next 4 years we'll be working with external activation. We realized that we had a great base with our customers that we could work with and our peers for continuing to build these relationships. And then social innovation. Something we are good at and that we have at the core of our company, and taking those assets and leveraging them along with our employees. So Aspire going forward, the differentiation points. So the goal is still the same, to improve high school success and increase college and career readiness. But taking the lessons we learned from the first 4 years, we'll be aiming for more social innovation, deploying more of the AT&T assets, which will include its employees and our labs and foundries. highlighting engaging customers, highlighting our focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, for at-risk students. And when I say at risk of not graduating or not graduating on time. Increasing a focus on metrics, which we found was very important, and we needed to do a better job of asking for the right data to make sure that these were proven programs. And then finally, a stronger emphasis on underserved populations. So the mission kind of going forward, we wanted to aspire to an America where every student graduates high school equipped with the knowledge and skills to power the nation's workforce. And that's an important mission statement because it's not totally altruistic. I mean, these are students that we hope will become employees of AT&T, will be better educated customers at AT&T. So how are we going to drive this innovation? Kind of in three buckets: investing locally, connecting people, and seeking exponential change. So on a local level, we actually early March released a local RFP. Some say, why did you release it in early March if the announcement's not being made till Monday? The school year comes into mind. So we released it to give local organizations an opportunity to file their grant proposals, for those proposals to be reviewed, for those that are selected to actually receive notice by the end of June, and checks actually be issued in early August, so that these new programs can start on time for the 2012-13 school year. The programs that we were looking for, we were using the What Works Clearinghouse as a base to send people to. We're looking for programs with strong evidence-based, programs that have a true proven track record. And for those organizations that may not have that proven track record, we're encouraging them to reach out and find community partners that they can work with that have a proven track record. And the social innovation we're talking about there is actually communities and community leaders kind of reaching together to come up with a proposal that would work for their community. We're giving a special consideration to programs that emphasize STEM discipline for at-risk students. And again, special consideration for those programs that actually do reach out in the community and are innovative. I'll note that while national organizations are not eligible for funding under the local RFP, local chapters and affiliates are encouraged to participate. And we will have a number of national partners as the next 4 years rolls out. The types of funding available will be for programs that either start a proven program in a new area, expand a current program to serve additional students, add new components to strengthen a current program, and most importantly, are ready for the fall semester of 2012-13. Eligible organizations, kind of self-explanatory, but pretty much it's school districts and school district foundations, charter school foundations, and private school foundations, 501c3 public charities that either work with public and private education institutions or private educational institutions. Again, there are concerns for E-rate, so that's why those organizations that are eligible. So the second part of the program is connecting people, and we were going to take the lessons we learned from Job Shadow and kind of move it forward to the next level. So we're calling it the Aspire Mentoring Academy. We're going to take the lessons from Job Shadow and take that program into a new level where the employees and the students, when they're doing these Job Shadow opportunities, have an actual business problem or a life problem to solve together. I know that I've done Job Shadow, I think 6 times by now. And the experience that the employee and the student have varies from time to time, just based on the conversation, how easy it is to get the student to open up and talk about what they want to do and ask the right questions. So this model actually will provide almost like a toolkit, but provide something for the students and the employees actually to work on together and hopefully continue to foster that ongoing relationship. There will be a continuation. We heard from many of our employees they wanted to do more. 4 hours wasn't enough. And we took that to heart. So we'll be developing programs where our employees who want to put in more time and want to develop stronger relationships with the students will be able to do that. Some will be through skills-based mentoring, where we'll be actually matching up the skills of our employees with the needs of students. And some will be e-mentoring, online programs working with a national partner to reach additional students. And this will involve a further commitment of time. Finally, seeking exponential change. How do you reach out there? What can we do actually to be disruptive in the education space? We have the AT&T Foundries. There are 3 of them around the world. One in Palo Alto, one in Plano, Texas, and one in Tel Aviv, Israel. And a foundry is basically a place where collaboration happens. We provide the backbone, the engineers, the employees, and then ask individuals to come in who are entrepreneurs, community leaders, app developers, to come in and work together. Sometimes they're done through hackathons, which I will tell you was a new word to me a month ago, and it doesn't involve hacking into anything, but it's basically a 2-day fast pitch, a 2-day speed dating almost, where individuals come together and share ideas and form teams. And those teams then basically have the resources behind them to actually start developing an app or an online program, and at the end of these, make a pitch to an AT&T executive. So we'll be leveraging those assets. Other examples of exponential change where we found just from interviewing and talking to the students that right now, and as most of us know, students learn from their phones and from online gaming. So we'll be reaching out and working with a national partner on the next level of gamification and the next generation of the next generation model of education. One example of that was, a student may not be able to understand a physics principle. But if you tell that same student and present them with a game that in order to make the plane fly or the bird get off the ground, they've got to be able to solve that problem. It's amazing that those same students that could not memorize the principle get to the next level, because that's how they get to the pot of gold or get to the next level. We'll also be doing some skills-based internships with national programs and other partners to place students and out to under contract with corporate clients. And that's pretty much just from an external standpoint. So the local RFP did open at the beginning of March and will close on April 20th. Like I said, on Monday we will have an announcement at the America's Promise Alliance Grad Nation Summit, where our chairman will make an announcement of our commitment for the next 4 years. And then throughout the year, we'll be announcing various components to this program. We're pretty excited and proud of the program, and have really taken to heart the feedback that we've gotten from community leaders and organizations like yourselves. So thank you for your time and your attention.
Any questions for Mr. Saperstein? Yes, Diane.
How is this program promoted outside of the schools, and how do you identify the businesses that you work with, and what is it you require of them?
Okay, so let me see if I can take that in order. So the local RFP process actually has been promoted through a number of means. We're advertising it in educational newspapers, magazines. We've reached out to the grant recipients from the first go-around for 2008. We've done various briefings like this to different segments, to different minority segments, to those in communities at risk, and let them know that the RFP was opening. We've directed that we have a pretty easy online portal that first takes them to the What Works Clearinghouse, gives them examples of the types of programs that we're looking for, and kind of guides them through what the steps of the local RFP process. As far as reaching out to other corporations or other partners, we'll be working with some national partners that we worked with in the past, and some new ones. In the past we've worked with Junior Achievement, we've worked with Boys and Girls Clubs, And we will be reaching out, working with other corporate partners in our foundries.
Thank you.
Ron, did you have a question?
Yes, more of a comment, Mr. Chairman, and to Mr. Saperstein. And I'm sure he's aware of this, but AT&T has a program called Operation Handshake. Are you familiar with that? And just would like to share that with my colleagues. It's a very interesting program for service-disabled veterans who can get involved with AT&T through a mentor apprenticeship program. And may I share the website with them?
Please do.
Yes, I'm kind of promoting on this one
Thank you,
here.
Ron.
You can go to www.attoperationhandsalute.com and find out more information about it. It's exactly the kind of program, Mr. Chairman, that I was referring to, and I'm sure our colleagues at Comcast and Verizon will have something very similar real soon.
Anything else, Mr. Saperstein? Well, I wanted us to have the benefit of that presentation because in this committee we don't deal very much with underserved youth. And we need to start thinking in those terms, I think, because as AT&T has done, that's where the problem gets fixed, maybe, of more minority involvement, particularly in STEM education. So I would commend that thought process to all of you who are working on the various task forces to incorporate some of those concepts into our thinking. And I certainly commend AT&T for thinking about this problem and committing both human and fiscal resources to getting the job done. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, moving along to our final presentation. Mr. Brett Perkins, who is Vice President of External Affairs from Comcast, has joined us to talk about an exciting program that Comcast has called Internet Essentials. Special thanks to Rudy Riochet for lining up Mr. Perkins to visit with us today. Mr. Perkins, the floor is yours, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. And I know that I have a defined amount of time, so I put together a presentation I want to run through at a high level, Internet Essentials, but I'm obviously available to drill down on any component here and talk offline if we need to go longer. So I'm going to go to the first slide. So a little bit of background on Internet Essentials, and I typically put a number of predecessor slides in here that runs through broadband adoption and the reason why Internet Essentials, Connect to Compete, and the myriad of other broadband adoption programs that we see out there now are so critical. I'm talking about the segment of the population that is most impacted by the lack of broadband adoption and then the barriers to broadband adoption. We were helped immensely by the research that's been done over the last several years by Dr. Turner Lee, the folks at the Pew, at FCC, and NTIA to really narrow down the field of vision in terms of how this program should be structured. We ended up targeting the place where we saw from the research the biggest drop-off in broadband adoption. And if you look at income, pretty clear that you get to a certain point on the income level, and it lined up pretty well around 130% of poverty, you really see families drop off a cliff. And so as we were looking at how could you pair up a program with a defined eligibility criteria, we looked at the free school lunch. And we had gone through several iterations, as I know many people in this space had, with eligibility. And so Internet Essentials is a program that's geared to closing the digital divide, targeting low-income families as defined by, at least for the next month, families receiving a free school lunch. And I mention that because we'll be expanding the program to reduced price lunch beginning in April. And so those families who are eligible receive three things. First, the ability to purchase our economy tier broadband service for $9.95 a month. There's no roll-to price, so for as long as you're eligible for the program, it's $9.95 a month. The second is the opportunity to purchase a computer for under $150. We are currently selling a netbook for $149.99. And then the third is access to online, in-print, and in-person digital literacy training. And so when customers sign up and become members of Internet Essentials, they're treated like any other customer. They get all the benefits that an Xfinity Internet customer would receive. So they get the Norton Security Suite, access to our customer service, but they get a couple of additional things with that. The first is that there are no additional fees, no modem rental charges, no deposit, no activation fees. Wanted to make this as simple as possible and as affordable as possible. The second really big thing along those lines is that there's no credit check for these families. So we know that that is one of the barriers that makes it difficult for low-income families to purchase these services. So in the next slide, I want to talk just a little bit about how we approach this. So going into it, we knew that there was no way that we were going to be able to do this on our own. If you do an overlay, Comcast serves 39 states. We're in over 6,000 communities. If you do a school district overlay, it's over 4,000 school districts. It's about 33,000 schools. And so this, at its very essence, needs to be something that is locally driven. So I think in year one, we learned a lot of lessons around that, and improvements that we were making are reflective in those lessons. And one of the things that we learned early on is if we were going to ask people to help, we needed to make it as simple as possible. And so I'm not the genius who thought of the idea of the partner portal. It was somebody else who came to us and said, what you want to do is this. We ended up creating a partner portal on our website. And our website's a very simple website that has this very sophisticated partner portal bolted onto it. And essentially what it allows people to do is go on, search the materials that we have available, and if you're interested in helping to spread the word, all you need to do is one of two things. Either you download it, print it, use it yourself, and I'm happy and great with that, or you order materials and we ship it to you free of charge. What we saw is more people took us up on the offer to ship it free of charge. So by the end of last year, we had done about 11.5 million pieces of material that had been shipped. That's now over 12 million pieces of material. And it really, we saw just about everyone doing it. School districts were the biggest. So we had our largest order came from the city of Chicago. The mayor and the superintendent there went full bore and ordered one piece for every child in the district. But we also see some of the orders coming in from community-based organizations, churches, where it may be 15, 20 pieces per. And as you'll note here, that we've got about 24,000 individuals registered on this portal. So one of the other big lessons for us in the outreach was the critical nature of school districts for us. Because this is based on the free school lunch, the communications that happen around the free school lunch provided a perfect opportunity to work in concert with what school districts were doing. So with Back to School, we really tried to make sure that as messages were going out to families about the free school lunch program, the school districts were including basic material with those messages. And so to try to crack the code around schools, we did a lot of outreach over the summer. The first, and in this slide, shows a kit that we sent out to superintendents. Superintendents, principals, and school administrators are not folks that we normally deal with. So as we were knocking on doors, you can imagine what the first response was from a lot of these folks. So this is Comcast, and you want me to send things home to my families. Let me think about that. So, in hindsight now, it's easy, and there were many people around this table who took the journey with us. The first several months were really difficult because of that. So we did a lot to communicate. We sent this kit that you see out to 4,000 school superintendents. Every single school superintendent in our footprint got this kit, and it was hey, we're here, and we're offering this program, and all you really need to do is say yes, and we'll provide the materials for you to communicate to your students. The next slide is we decided to double down on that. And we said that, we know that these are challenging times for school districts, and so getting communications out would require us to go as broadly as we could. So we did a mailing to every single principal in our footprint. So over 30,000 of these packets went out with a simple, here's what you can do to help. And again, the ask for school districts, and one of the things that we learned pretty clearly is they were already overburdened. So the notion that somehow we would say, you guys have to do all this was kind of ridiculous. So what we were looking for is you say yes, and we'll ship, send, drive, whatever you need, materials, just so we can get one of these pieces in front of every single family who is eligible for this. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the collateral. We did a bunch of different pieces, and really we got feedback from everyone around this. We have 3 different pieces of collateral for school districts, because we had some schools that said, you know what, for you to get attention, you're going to need something that looks like marketing. We had school districts that said, I don't want Comcast marketing going home to my families, and folks who were somewhere in between. So when people gave us suggestions, we adjusted, and we tried to provide them what they needed to help us out. One of the downsides of cutting up a presentation is you end up cutting things out of it. This is a sampling of the folks to whom we've given presentations, worked with, or partnered, but it is just a representative sampling. We ended up counting over 3,000 government officials, community and education associations. When I typically do this presentation, I have about 4 different slides here. So, a couple of things that are missing from this slide is that One Economy has served as our national outreach partner, and Dr. Turner Lee has been our research partner on this. Lisa has been one of our training partners. So, one of the things that we found pretty early is that, as long as we asked, there were a lot of people out there who were willing to hop on board and help us out with this. So let me talk a little bit about, before I do.
Your conference is ending now. As requested by the host, please hang up.
When we talk about the school districts, so there are a couple of great success stories that I think are worth noting just very, very briefly, because they're the ones that I try to use when I talk about the power of working together with folks who have a common goal in mind. And so when I talk about how this can work, I name a couple of them. One is in Detroit. In Detroit, the Detroit Parents Network is their version of PTA, but an incredibly engaged group of folks who embrace this right away. And as you would imagine, in Detroit, this is important for a district that has real challenges around making sure the kids show up on the first day of school. And so the Detroit Parents Network literally does door-to-door canvassing, at the beginning of the school and throughout the school year. And they picked this up as one of their things and adopted it and did door-to-door work, passing out our literature. The second example that I always use is just the city of Chicago and the power of when you have a mayor and a superintendent that say, for all the reasons that we care about, we want this to work. So when Mayor Emanuel said, we're going to do this, and the superintendent said, we'll do this, we actually knew the person working on the docks who was responsible for taking in the 300,000 pieces that we shipped to them and then getting it out to all the schools. Third example that I use is Denver public schools. City of Denver, has been typically pretty progressive there. The Piton Foundation is partnering with them around educational achievement. They actually created a subcommittee inside of DPS working specifically, and it's operating now to make sure that this is as successful as possible inside of the school district. They drive it. We sit on the committee. So we found a whole bunch of new partnerships working through this. Let me run through quickly some key accomplishments and milestones. So last month we published this launch report, and it's available on our website, and I'm happy to send hard copies to anyone who was interested in it. And the report was really intended to summarize really the first 5 months of operation. So we launched with Back to School 2011, and we were running at 100 miles an hour to get it off the ground. And so we learned a lot during that process, but we've also been in conversations with a number of organizations that are trying to do the same thing. And so the goal for us was to be as transparent as possible and to offer as much out there in terms of the lessons learned. We did some stuff that worked. We did some stuff that didn't work. We heard a lot of feedback about that. And so by putting out the report, it was a way of saying, here is the first half of our roadmap. And if you're following, so we spent a lot of time to Connect to Compete and the folks at the FCC and at NCTA just saying it's an open book. I'll tell you, if I had known this, a year ago, I probably would have done these things differently. But I'd also tell you these are the 4 things you absolutely ought to do if you want this to work. So a couple of highlights from it. We talked about the outreach to our 4,000 school districts and 30,000 schools, partnering with elected officials and community-based organizations around the country. As a part of our in-person digital literacy training, we partnered with local organizations, and again, this was one that we just didn't have the capacity or really the ability to do ourselves. So working with folks like LISTA, Urban League, and literally hundreds, because it was about 300 different organizations around the country. We did a train-the-trainer series of trainings, and then these organizations over a two and a half month period did about 300 in-person digital literacy training sessions. And again, we learned a ton from the experience, and actually one of the pieces that we're in the process of retooling now, it's a comment that Jose has given to me twice, is because we were rolling it out and we're doing it nationally, had this, here's how we want to do it. And the one thing that we heard loudest from folks is, if you actually want to get butts in the seats, you got to allow us some latitude to provide training that is relevant. So the example is, let us do job training or finding a job online as the hook, and then all this other stuff that you want people to learn about, whether it's online safety and the like, you make as a part of that training. But online safety itself, won't be the big driver. So a part of what we're retooling right now in our in-person training is reflection of the feedback that we receive from folks. We ended up engaging our employees in this, and one of the things, as you'd imagine, is this is about as feel-good as you can get for our employees. Once they learned about it and knew that, this was something that I can take into my own community and get people connected, I can talk about it, it's a simple, actionable thing that our folks can do, and it's been pretty powerful. We distributed over 5,500 computers by the end of last year. That number continues to grow. Also on the lessons learned, we thought that number would be bigger. One of the pieces of follow-up research that we're doing is trying to better understand what's the driver. Is it because it's a netbook, the type of computer equipment? Our early research shows that over 80% of the people who were signing up for the program already had a working computer in the house. So trying to better understand really what's happening there. And at the end of 5 months, we had signed up over 41,000 families. And that number, again, continues to grow. So we think about the impact in the household. If we figure, we've done about an average of 2 families in the household. Say 80,000 children by the end of last year, and a bigger number of people, family members who are in this household that are impacted by this. Inside of the report, you'll see we broke down just by counties and state where the activations were. We're in the process now of finalizing what will be a feedback loop for local markets. So we've heard from mayors and school districts who say, hey, I'm really interested in this, but I need to have more data. So we'll be rolling out within the next several weeks, going out to these folks and doing a real rundown. It says, this is what your numbers look like. This is how you compare to other school districts, and here are some best practices that we have seen in cities and in school districts, and have a dialogue, because one of the best things that has occurred really over the last 2 months for us, now that we've come through this first wave of the launch, is the type of feedback. A lot of people have participated in this and have great feedback about what we can do to improve it. So let me also go to the program enhancements. We had always anticipated that we would learn things and that we would make tweaks. It was one of the things that we had talked to the FCC about. We had talked to most of our partners about it. And we made a number of tweaks throughout 2011. These were just operational things that became no-brainers. When we sent out applications, we realized some people weren't completely filling it out, so we put a reminder on the form. With eligibility, because this was free school school lunch, and some people didn't have their free school lunch notice at the beginning of the school year. We began accepting the previous school year. There were a series of enhancements that just became, we know how we can do this better, and it's what our business people do normally. But there were also a group that we got feedback from. So starting with the first quarter, a number of these enhancements are going to go into place. The first of which was expanding the program from free school lunch to free and reduced school lunch. Commissioner Clyburn mentioned this right away when we met with her when this program was getting launched. And one of the comments we said is, look, let us get it launched. Let us see that we can do this, and then we'll come back. So this was one of the ones that was right at the top of the list. And so we were pleased to be able to say that we're going to expand this to include reduced price lunch. It is also the number one thing that we heard from school districts, because while we make a differentiation, most school districts, the way that they deal with this is, you're in the National School Lunch Program. So Comcast, you want me to communicate differently amongst my students? I can't do that. So hopefully this will be a significant improvement for them. We're going to be doubling the speed of the connection. So this was originally, the economy tier was 1.5 megabit. It'll be a 3 megabit. That's happening in the second quarter. We're enabling community-based organizations and other partners to do bulk purchasing. So we had already started to allow that for computers. We are trialing now in 4 markets, doing it for the service as well. So we've seen from school districts, some churches, and other community organizations that say $9.95 for some of the folks that I serve is still too much. So I may have a different funding stream. I'd like to be the billing source. If you bill me, then I'll take care of the service for the folks that I'm serving. Streamlining the approval process. So we're going to be working with school districts on Provision 2 schools and creating a streamlined process. And these are schools that have the highest percentage of free school lunch children. So it will simplify the process for them. And then expanding and enriching our online and in-person digital literacy training. So our website now is going under a retooling, and we'll end up adding a fair amount of resources by the end of the spring into the summer, getting ready for back to school 2012. And then the last thing on here is working with Connect to Compete and all of the partners that are a part of Connect to Compete to look at ways that we might make sure that the 2 programs are complementary and helping promote and just do things better. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Very much. Appreciate it. Any questions for Mr. Perkins? It's a terrific program. Yes, Jessica.
So we continue to be very excited about the program, and thank you for providing all the data. It's really interesting. I just have 2 very brief questions. Extremely pleased to see that it's being extended to the reduced price lunch students, and we're wondering, will there be a new round of outreach that happens that highlights that? Because now people need to know the...
Yeah, it's a good question, Jessica. Thank you. So we're in the process right now with putting together the feedback loop to school districts and cities, and as a part of that feedback loop, we're going to be talking about the enhancements, both the reduced priced lunch, but the bulk, which we heard from a lot of folks, as well as the speed, because one of the things that we know is if we just talk about that there's more speed, people tend to say, well, that might be something that I want. So through the spring, we're going to be pushing out, and really starting in April 1. If you actually go into our partner portal right now and order materials, it'll say to you, you have to wait because we're retooling all the marketing material. And so starting at the beginning of April, we'll have a new wave of marketing material that goes out, and people can order them, and a big push to make sure that everyone knows that it's reduced. The other thing is we'll be looking for help from just about anyone around it, for school districts in particular, because this was what we heard from them. As they begin their messaging about free school lunch, the end of the year and the beginning of the year, enhancing what they say about this program so they can communicate that, hey, by the way, now it's open to everyone. And I know the business that you're in, so we'll take any advice around what else we should do to get the word out about it.
Okay. Well, we can talk. Happy to talk offline about
Thank you.
that. My second question is, I saw an article maybe a week or so ago that you all were a little surprised by the uptake. You thought there'd be a higher percentage of uptake in a number of communities. I'm wondering, sort of, you kind of outlined some of the things, but are there lessons learned that we can take, and apply to other policies and broadband programs that are happening at the FCC?
Yeah. So I think, it's easy when you can juxtapose communities and look at how there was engagement in a holistic way. So I'll look at, if you look at the report and you look at the ones that were at the top of the report, so markets like Chicago, Atlanta, Denver, South Florida, they all share something in common. It's an engaged community-based organization, an engaged school district, and typically engaged political leadership that we're able to partner with. So it's one thing to say, hey, we have all this material and we want to send it. It's another thing to have folks who meet you in the middle and say, here's where you need to be. Or we're going to make sure that we get one of these in the hands of every single child. So if you look at the spread, quite often you can point to those couple of things and see those that were successful and those that were less successful. So our challenge now, and part of the feedback loop, is going back and saying, so now we know a little bit more about this. We know that it makes a difference if you order, and we're going to ship it to you for free. If you order enough material, at least for your free and reduced price lunch, it'd be great just to order it for every single child and make it easy. Because that's what really we had asked people to do. We're not worried about the expense around that. Just send it home like you send everything else home. And then the other piece of it is the bully pulpit. That every single opportunity that we can find for, whether it's elected officials, community folks, to speak about this, but speak about it from the position of why they care. So I talk broadband policy speak, but I realize that if I'm talking to people in the community, we have to talk about things that really matter here. So why do I need to be online, and why should I, as an advocate, be out there pushing other advocates and families to do this? Well, it's about jobs, right? You can't find a job now in most cases unless you're doing your job search online. It's about education. With blended learning and where school is going online, your child gets left behind if you're not doing this. It's about energy. It's these range of things where we're really looking to create a little more excitement around why this should be a topic of conversation, and not, we shouldn't have it over here as an also-ran. It really needs to be embedded in what everyone who is working in the public policy sphere is working on.
My understanding is that existing Comcast customers can't take advantage of the program, and I was wondering if you all had considered changing the criteria so that Comcast existing customers who otherwise are eligible but might be struggling to afford broadband can take advantage of the program.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. We haven't. We've had long conversations about it. One of the challenges when we were putting together the program was figuring out where do you end up putting the box for it. The example is we started and we put the box around free school lunch. Said, here's the defined universe. And we looked at it. We took, the 5 months and expanded it so it's free and reduced. The program was really intended to be about getting people who aren't online onto the internet, and that's why we drew the box there. Now it's you could be. We don't have a way of checking whether or not you're a customer of somebody else, and you could be offline for 90 days, but it was really targeted to people who aren't currently online.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Mr. Perkins. We really appreciate your time, and it's a wonderful initiative, and we wish you all the best with it. Any new business to come before the body? Jim.
It's more of a concern without a recommendation. The commission has just been given new spectrum auction
legislation to implement. And my initial experience with the concept of spectrum auctions came about 2 or 3 years ago. Somebody told me about the concept. They had heard an FCC representative had made a presentation before an industry organization about spectrum auctions and the potential there. And the first question that came from the audience was, well, television's a very successful business. Why would anybody want to turn in their TV spectrum? And the answer from the FCC representative reported to me was that we think there are some small and minority-owned television companies that are going to want to sell out. And so my initial reaction to spectrum auctions was very negative. And now we have the legislation. It's to be implemented by the Commission. And the concern I have is that there are minority broadcasters and small broadcasters that are having trouble. And some of them may choose to turn in some or all of their spectrum. And my concern is, what does this mean for diversity in the delivery of information to the public, and diversity in general? And since we are the diversity committee, I thought I should at least express that issue to the committee. I don't have a recommendation. I don't know how this fits into the Commission's implementation of the spectrum auction legislation, but I wanted to throw it out there because I hope that, you know, some of the great minds around this table will look at that and say, you know, this is something we need to talk about. The Commission's obviously going to have some rulemaking proceedings to implement the legislation, and I would like to think that we ought to be thinking about where diversity fits into that implementation.
I think those are really good points, and I want to commend you to or suggest that you pay close attention, because it's going to be an accelerated schedule for the rulemaking proceeding. And I can tell you one of the rulemaking proceedings, one of the first out of the box, is one that the video division, among others, is working on in OET, and that's the concept of channel sharing. And that's something that you may look at as an opportunity for smaller broadcasters to actually use existing spectrum more efficiently. But of course, these are rulemakings for comment. So if that is used more efficiently, hopefully that might not limit diversity, but might provide opportunity for increased revenue streams to support increased diversity. So that's among the early rulemakings that you might want to have input into.
Thanks, Barbara.
Jessica, is it on this topic? Please.
I just wanted to say I share Jim's concern, and I wonder if we might, as a committee, be able to issue some sort of statement or recommendation, guiding principle moving forward in all the various rulemakings that will be used to implement the legislation.
I think I'd have to talk to Tom about that, because I think it may be outside the scope of our charter. We have to talk a little bit about that and maybe talk to the GC about it, the relationship between this group and the outstanding rulemakings that are coming. So I'd have to get back to you on that if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for raising that point. It's a good one. Any other new business? If not, I just want to say we will meet again in the May-June timeframe. You might say to yourself, well, Henry, why don't you just pick a date? The problem is that this room is in great demand, and we have to run all the traps to find out when in that time frame it might be available, and then we've got to check schedules, and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why Henry just doesn't pick a date. And we'll be getting back to you as soon as we do pick a date. But that's the background there. I just want to extend my gratitude to Barbara, our designated federal officer, to Tom Reed, who was working very hard on issues associated and around the committee, to Carolyn and to Nicole also for all of their hard work around the committee. These folks all have day jobs, and yet they're giving us a lot of their time to advance the work of the committee. So I know I speak on behalf of all of you when I say that we're very, very grateful to them for that. So with that, I will thank you again for coming and for your hard work, and we'll remain adjourned until the May-June timeframe. Thank you very much.